Who's ready? Oh, I like Space Alien. That's too fun. Ooh. Oh, I like the hearts. Just who do you think you are? It's all about asking. 'Cause we're moving on up. Time to break free. Nothing can stop ya. Oh my gosh, that's really exciting. Thank you, SoundCloud, per the usual, for providing me with a wonderful soundtrack to my life. I haven't heard that song in so long, and I am getting ready to be a wedding DJ and also a wedding singer. I know. And I'm putting together this playlist, and that song just randomly came up because I'm looking for some funky 80s, 70s stuff. And bravo to SoundCloud. They know my algorithms. I am Stephanie Zellhofer. I am going to be taking you through our conversation today. If you haven't yet joined us, this is our 4th installment of the Shortcut series, which is a part of the Zelladu Masterminds community. Who is Zelladu? Well, Zelladu is me. I know. It's what I call myself in the concept of a personal brand, so to speak. And what Zelladu stands for is constant evolution, always thinking about ways in which we can make ourselves better. And I am never going to stop learning. And I've had a very unique environment around me over the course of the last 41 years. And I've just been this kind of sponge that's been sucking up the things around me, and have had kind of a breakthrough in the fact that I've seen so much and I've done a lot. I've worked all over the world. I've seen a lot of things all over the world. I've lived all over the world, that now I feel like it's time to share. And when it comes to the unusual position that we're in as human beings right now, especially when you're in your 20s and your 30s and maybe your 40s, some of us are settled in and at my age, but it's hard to sometimes find people who have done things in the past that are willing to give mentorship in a way that is relevant to the future. Sometimes the conversations that you have with people who are your elders or your mentors might be a little bit more grounded in the past experiences of life. And don't get me wrong, everything that we talk about in the Shortcut series does have fundamental ground on what it is that we've done in the past and where we've come from, but it always asks through the lens of where it is that you are going. There's no right or wrong answer, but what I do is I cover a couple of key points on a key topic and ask you to think about how it is that you'd like to apply it to your own life. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to me. You can find me on zelladu.com. I'm also on Instagram at ziggityzell or at zelladu_, and I'll list all of the stuff in the event description. But enough about me. Let's jump back into the conversation around the power of community. So let's start with this question. What is community? Well, as in most things in life these days, there are 1.5 million answers to the question of what is community. The way that I like to think about it is threefold. I like to think about community in the ways in which we express our passions. I like to think about community in the ways that we can give back in the places that we live and work. And I like to think about community in the ways in which we can respect where we came from and the culture that defines us. And those are the 3 topics that we're going to cover off today. And the thing that I want to ask you is, how would you like to be a part of your community? And what do you consider community? And with that said, we're going to jump right into it. Now you're going to see me looking off to this side, which is the same slides that you're seeing in front of you, but I do have them here for reference. And you know, when you think about your chosen community and you think about the overlapping of passions, and I say values as well, you know, it could be with values that it is working really hard to accomplish something. Maybe you're training for a marathon. Maybe you, want to lose weight. Maybe you want to master a black belt in karate. Whatever the case may be, the values that we develop when we get to express them through our passion oftentimes have a way of really sticking to our bones and becoming, meatier. We get to be meatier selves, if you will, as an analogy. And where do you begin? Well, you begin by asking yourself, what is it that I'm passionate about? And if you're not sure what you're passionate about, instead of letting it run through your head like a rat in a or a hamster, start doing things. Punch a list out that says, what am I curious about? What have I always wanted to try? Do I want to try and learn the violin? Do I want to try to hike the hiking trails that are around my neighborhood? Do I want to help animals? Do I want to clean things up? There's I can go on, and I won't. I think that you guys get the point. But the reality is that you can start anywhere. The important thing is just to start. And if you get into something and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me, get out of it. But if you get into something and you love it, and you find yourself in a group that is inspired and motivated by the passions that you all share, then you can teach each other, you can learn together, you can amplify yourselves, you can get yourself out of bed if you need to get out early, you can share costs if you're going to a destination together. And building a community around that passion is really valuable. So step one is asking yourself, what is it that I want to figure out? Where am I going to channel my passion? And once you've identified that, the next step would be for you to identify a group. And there are a lot of different places where you can find groups actually these days. And what I will say is that thanks to technology, we're able to take that even further. So there are some really phenomenal groups. I really like Meetup. I didn't recognize how great Meetup was until I was living in China and I started looking up different things to do, and particularly around arts and crafts, physical fitness. There are these groups that just exist, and it's completely free, and you just join and you type in what it is that your passion is, and it pulls up all of these different groups. And sometimes it's 5 people, sometimes it's 12 people, sometimes it's 50 people. It can be everything from a book club to different people who are building sailboats, whatever it might be, refurbishing things, taking care of plants. Any of those things, you can find groups that are actively getting together and exchanging information. So check out your social platforms. Facebook also has groups. LinkedIn has groups, depending on what it is that you want to invest yourself in. University campuses, they have both formalized clubs and they have informal clubs, but keep your eye out on bulletin boards, in the school newspaper, and keep your eye out for things that might perk your interest and take a stab at it. You can also find ways to tie into your passion in paid organizations. So dance classes, gym memberships, karate classes, the things that we would maybe consider hobbies. I don't know if I love the word hobby in the context that you don't want to not be willing to invest not just yourself, but also maybe just a little bit of money into the things that you're passionate about. And oftentimes you'll find that there's a little bit of financing required, but I don't think that should be a negative. I think that it should be something that you're willing to invest in. So take a look at those elements. And what's awesome about paid communities is that you find acceleration in your education. Usually there's a little bit more of an accountability in saying you're going to give me something for what I'm giving you financially, and you're able to progress through stages or levels. You work towards a performance piece at the end of a series of learning sessions, and so there's a lot of reward in that as well. My personal favorite when it comes to passion and community is nonprofits. I didn't know a whole lot about nonprofits when I first started getting into them. I kind of landed in it on accident. Now I have three nonprofit communities that I am strongly tied to. The first being One More Productions, which is a group in Orange County, California that works to empower and champion the development of young performers that are looking to get, their personal development, their public speaking, their nerves, also their ability to memorize lines, their ability to build character, all of those components. I belong to another group called Infinite Flow, which is a diversity and dance group. They're based out of Los Angeles, California, and then the Human Rights Foundation, which is based out of New York. And with all of these groups that I've been a part of in nonprofit, and I also belong to a nonprofit in New York where I plant trees. I work with the Surfrider Foundation. And so when you think about the concept of a nonprofit, like what does that even mean, right? It literally means that the people who are creating the group or the organization that is bringing all of this effort together is doing something in service to their community. The only way you can become a nonprofit is if you are teaching or if you are improving the environment that you are in and the community that you belong to. So, whether that is empowering women, whether that is empowering minorities, whether that is cleaning up your neighborhood, whether that is teaching something that you're good at to somebody, spending time with someone who may have lost a loved one or is dealing with some type of addiction. Homelessness, I could go on and on, obviously. I won't go any further, but thinking about the nonprofit and looking up, if you think about just the topic that you're interested in and you put nonprofit volunteer blank, something is going to pop up on your search engine and you'll be able to dedicate your time to people who are totally receptive to having you support your passion and their need. I don't want to say that the friendship groups that we have, especially in high school and in college and as we're younger and growing, they are true. But the friendships that we sometimes form with limited range are sometimes based off of who we are exposed to at a place and a time. And I know that with my friendship circles, there are some friends that I can talk to deeply about my hopes and dreams and passions and the things that I want to do and the things that I want to develop. And then there's friends that I go to Sunday brunch with, I'll go to the clubs with. I'll be a little bit less conversational and a little bit more physical maybe in the way that I'm engaging with them. And so I don't want to take away from friendship groups, but I do want to challenge you in thinking beyond the friendship groups that you have. And as an individual, really thinking about the passions that you have and how you can find groups that share those passions and can amplify them. So, I mentioned a little bit about positivity, but the reality is that when you're sharing values, you can find yourself in a negative space where you might not be generating as much positive energy as you could. And so I really want to just mention, because I feel it's my due diligence, that creating positive experiences and staying positive in your experiences is a huge shortcut to success. If you find yourself in a situation where you're arguing with people a lot because of differences of opinion and it's leaving you feeling less than fabulous, it might not be the right environment for you. And I would just encourage you to always lead with positivity. I'm going to give you a really quick case study. In Iceland, they wanted to increase sporting activities so that they could give younger kids something to do with their time that was more positive than drinking and smoking. And so I'm actually going to read some of the facts over here, but I was really impressed with this. So Iceland said, "We want to reduce teen alcohol and drug consumption by providing more access to community sporting groups." This is what happened. Over the course of a handful of years, they saw excessive alcohol consumption drop from 42% in 1998 to 5% in 2016. They saw the percentage of people who were using cannabis dropping from 17 to 7. Again, we're talking about youth. Cigarette use fell from 23% to 3%. So just in that, thinking about being a part of a community or part of a network that is engaged in passion is able to express themselves through their sporting activities. And as a byproduct, you are reducing alcoholism and smoking, which has already proven to lead to number one, bad habits, number two, bad health, and number three, tragedy in life. And missed opportunities. And so that's just a case study I wanted to share with you guys, because I thought it was kind of cool that Iceland had the concept, had the ability to take the data and circulate it, and to really see such staggering numbers and the positive effects of getting together and harnessing your passion towards a greater good. Moving into the second point, community and where we live. Now, this is something that I'm becoming more and more passionate about as I get older, but I think that had I known what I know now, I would have loved to have been a bit more involved in my community at an earlier age. So communities are essentially built, and cities are built to operate as a business. Their goal is to generate profit, and their responsibility is to take that profit and to put the profit back into the city, into the infrastructure, into the buildings, into the roads, into the stop signs, into the communication platforms, into the community improvement projects. There's a fabulous child out here screaming. She sounds like she's happy, so don't worry, she's okay if you can hear her. But knowing what is going on in your community and knowing how you can contribute to your community. You know, we all, if you're living in a community, in a city, which most of us are, or in a county, even if it's rural, you are paying taxes to your city. Every time you go into a store and you pay sales tax, you are paying taxes to your city. That money is intended to provide for you. So in number one, you know, buying local is great. But number two, understanding beyond the sales tax, what can you do to be a member of your community? Well, number one, speak up. If you see something, say something. I know, I'll say it once, I'll say it again in just a little bit. But if you see a pothole, report it. If you see graffiti that is really offensive, or if you see a broken window, or if you see a crime going down, it's not a bad idea to tell someone about it. The only way that anyone is going to know is if you are part of your community and you hold accountability towards it. Typically what winds up happening in a city is you have a mayor who oversees the entire city. That city is broken into different districts. The districts are overseen by city council members. Now, those city council members are not full-time employees. They typically have other jobs, but their job is to be your voice in the city. And they represent you based off of the region that you and the environment that surrounds you live in. So if you see that your city, your region, your district is in need of something, like right now, for example, there have been a few casualties at a street not too far from here. And I see these conversations going on between the people of Long Beach and District 6, which is where I live. And they're saying, listen, we've already seen 2 incidents go down here. We need to increase the trafficking of this intersection. We need to put in a stoplight. We need to increase communication, and we need to make a change. And the city council members hear that, and then they create a budget and they create a plan around it, and then they present it to the city, and hopefully everyone becomes aligned and they move forward together. But if the people in the city never raise their voice, the individuals, nothing will ever change. If in front of your house there is a huge pothole, say something. And the city has funds that can make that pothole go away. But if you never say anything, who's going to know that that pothole exists, right? Do you need nighttime lighting? Right? If you're walking around your neighborhood, or if you're taking your kids to school and you see that it's a dark area, tell your city council member that you need lighting around the school, or you need lighting across this path, or that maybe there is lighting, but the light bulbs are out. If you see something, say something, right? What else? Is there trash? Is there graffiti? Now there's 2 things you can do about trash. Number one, you can work to pick it up yourself, which we'll get to in just a second. But if someone's dumping furniture like illegally, if someone is, breaking windows, if someone is stealing cars, if someone is, painting profane things on the wall, if you see something, say something. And that is the very first step that it takes to be able to better the environment that you're living in. And, it could be that this is your mom's neighborhood. This could be that you're only going to live here for a few years. But the better habits that we build as soon as we can, the better members of community we will be. And so with that, my $1 million question, or my $1 million statement rather, and this is big in New York, if you see something, say something, right? Tip number 2, know your city, who lives in it, and what is happening in it. You can very simply go to any search engine and you can type your city name and demographics, and you will get this beautiful report, plus or minus a few years, that will tell you so much about your city. It's going to tell you about the types of people that live there. It's going to tell you about median age. It's going to tell you about median income. It's going to tell you about the businesses and the job opportunities that belong in your city. Here in Long Beach, the majority of the jobs that we have belong to either cities, the city itself, or to the universities. And then, beyond that, we have a very booming tech industry, and we have a big space industry that's growing. So you're actually seeing a huge shift in some of the jobs that are available. But it just puts you in this headspace to think, all right, I'm living here. How can I engage? If I need a new job, where are those jobs? If I'm trying to accomplish something, or if I'm, a vendor and I'm trying to acquire new clients, or if I'm a business and I'm trying to bring in new consumers, who am I talking to? And if you see who it is that lives in your city and you understand the fabric and the makeup of that city, you're going to be able to devise a better strategy. So just knowing your city and knowing who's in it and knowing what's going on. I'm going to read here from a couple of my points. Small businesses targeting new clients. We mentioned that, where the jobs are, what the school system looks like, how much money is coming in from tourism. Just to kind of understand what the future of that looks like and if it's something that can be leveraged. And the priorities for the city. What propositions have been passed? What is it that you're paying taxes on? Where is your money going? And understanding those basic principles around your fundamental city basics is going to give you the opportunity to act smarter and make better decisions around how you're engaging with your city. So here's just a couple of fun facts. Now, this is based off of the census, and I actually spoke with a gentleman yesterday who gave me a new link. So I'm actually going to see if I can find some updated information. But this was like a 10-second search around the city that I live in. You can see that it has the top 10 ranked employers. I mentioned a lot of city and university and education-based jobs. You can see the blend of demographics, 35.8% Hispanic, 4.7% other, 11.9% Asian, 14.5% Black, 33.1% white. I love my city. I wouldn't have guessed that those were the demographics, but it's really interesting to see that they are. You can see that tourism is mentioned here. It gives shout out to a couple of the facilities that can be used. And it also talks about business zones and where you can go to leverage your ideas if you want to start a small business, etc. And so this is just a snapshot of what you can find. Everybody has a different type of fabric in their city, but just knowing those fundamentals is going to make you a wiser and better neighbor. And it's really good. And moving into tip number 3, and I don't even think that this is listed here, but as you live in a city, typically every 2 years and every 4 years, there is some type of vote, whether that is on a proposition that is going to affect how many taxes you're paying or the decisions that are being made around infrastructure, education, etc., or your representation, your city council members, your mayor, etc. The more you know about your city, the more you can be investing in the decisions that will shape the future of your city. So tip number 3 is participate. I know vote's not on here. I don't know how I missed it, but vote in every election. A few other things. Number 1, walk your city. it's a double whammy slammy, right? Because you get healthier, but you also get familiar with what's happening in town. And you get to see if there are businesses opening, if there are businesses closing, where the new opportunities are for living. Maybe you'll see a new place that you might want to move into. The sky is the limit, but walking your neighborhood gives you a really true understanding of what's actually happening as opposed to what you're being told is happening. Grabbing a pickup stick. So I do this. I used to do this with my former best friend and dog, who is no longer with us. But I would have a little trash picker upper. You can get them at the dollar store for $1. And as I was walking, I would just pick up trash. And over the course of a year, I picked up over 10,000 cigarette butts that were heading to the ocean. I picked up, whatever I could find, but I didn't have to touch it because I had my little stick. But I felt that I was leading by example and saying, this is my neighborhood and I care about it. And when you throw your trash on my street, I'm not okay with it because you're saying that it's okay for anyone to throw their trash. And so, unfortunately, we have to play, villains and superheroes sometimes when it comes to the trash situation. But proactively picking things up can make a huge difference, not only to the pride that people carry in the environment around them, but also in the ways that you're affecting the environment and nature and the bigger picture of the world that we all need to take care of. Participate in the annual homeless count. I will tell you that when I did the homeless count here in Long Beach, I was so pleased not only by the organization that was putting it on and the way that it was so systematic and well organized, but also the donations that had come in from different agencies and the things that we were empowered to give out as we were making the count. And then more than anything, I discovered that the majority of the people that lived in the parks and in the streets that I had been walking by without knowing who these people were and was living in a little bit more of a state of fear, the majority of them were veterans. The majority of them had been living in that condition for over 15, 20 years. And they were not just homeless people living in the park, but they were people who have served our country and have served our state and have served our community in ways that are difficult to repay. And I was having conversations with these people, and I was so relieved at the end of the homeless count to not only recognize that not everyone was as desperate as I thought that they were, but also in the fact that they were more of the community than even I was. They had been here before I even knew that the city was going to be something that I was going to live in. And there was this essence of having to respect them a bit more because they were an integral part of my community. And so, just learning a little bit more about the stories behind the people who are living in the streets is an awesome way to get to know a little bit more about your city. Not to mention the fact that also understanding a bit more about the resources and the process on how to help them if they're interested in finding a way out is awesome. Support local, obviously buy local, but if you're having a really good experience, take a picture, find out the Instagram handle, and promote the companies that you're shopping with and from. Interested in politics? Hey, I know I am. Visit your city's government sites and understand where the next election is and find out if it's something that you might want to get involved with. If you're interested in making a big change, or if you're interested in being a public figure in regards to making change in your community, there is a 27-year-old right now in Compton that's running for mayor. There's a 23-year-old in the City of Industry, I believe it is, or Bellflower, that is currently mayor. And, you can't be too young to be involved in politics. And so if you are excited about politics, there's nothing that should stop you in getting involved. And it's as simple as a search, as simple as a phone call. There's one more thing that you can do that I also didn't list here, which is attending your state of the city. Every year, every city has a kind of health check or a report out to their community. And understanding the priorities of your city also gives you an understanding of what's to come, how you might leverage that for your own business or your own personal improvement. And it's also just a really lovely thing to talk about at the next dinner party that you have. All right, we're moving into number 3. This is our third and final point of conversation around community. but I think that it is one of the most important. This is a little bit of a touchier subject because we really don't have a lot of control over the makeup of who we are. We are all, we inherit a lot of our genetic traits. Our family history, it is what it is, and there's a lot of things in the past that you can't change. And so when it comes to culture and community, obviously I like to lean into the positive sides, but there can be a lot of hardships that need to be worked through. And I do think that with the light being shed on a lot of the imbalance that has been so under shadow for such a long time, culture is really coming into a spotlight. And if you're going to be talking about where you come from and the things that have happened to you, it's really great if you actually know a few stories around where you come from. And so, and some families don't talk about this at all, and some families talk about this a lot. If you're interested in a really great story about community and culture, check out the Question of You episode 16. And I interviewed Damian Lorton, and he gives us a really great story about 12 generations of California history, which is awesome. But not all of us have that at our fingertips. And so when you talk about the community that is in you, right, all of us come from somewhere. And most of us know a fraction of what it is that we come from. And we identify most with the things that we've been taught, but there's typically more to the pie that we can investigate. So let's jump right in here. What you're looking at here is a migratory pattern analysis that has been kind of laid out into a flat pattern. And what I walk away with when I look at this, and this is just showing the traffic of humans from these flows represent 75% of human movement from 2005 to 2010. So it's just a segment, right? But what it's showing me is that people are moving into different places at rapid rates. And what that means is that it can be a little more difficult to hang on to our culture. We may completely lose our culture if we leave our homeland and move to another location, and a few generations pass and all of a sudden the language is lost, or no one's cooking food from there, or no one ever goes back there, or no one ever talks about it. And so when you look at this diagram of the ways in which we're moving at such a rapid rate to new locations that are not, grounded in our cultural heritage, it can be easy to understand how many of us may not know what the full gamut looks like. Now, in that, the first and primary question becomes, how much do you want to know? And I think when when you're looking to uncover and discover your heritage, there are two things that could happen. Number one, you can learn that your heritage may be different than you were taught. And number two, you may find that in the networks that you've been told have been in existence for your creation may also be different. And so, when we go into the 23s and me's and we see what it is that we are made up of, we're able to understand a bit more about who we are and where we come from. Well, what may we find out when we're looking at those things? And again, there are pros and there are cons. And you need to ask yourself what it is that you want to know in that environment. So you can know things like regional association, right? Am I 25% German? Or am I 12% German and 14% Spanish and 2% European or English? I don't know. And I don't know if my math was even right there. It's stream of consciousness. But you can find out a little bit more about where your family comes from in a very specific genealogical roadmap. You can also find out things about your health conditions. With all of the information that's going into the 23s and me's and there was the other one called Ancestry.com, you are able to see data that is congregating together and you're able to understand, the people who are getting all of this data, even anonymously, your name doesn't even need to be attached to it, but they can start seeing patterns in like, oh, well, people who are from this area might suffer more from heart disease, or people who come from this area might live to be a little older, or maybe they have an average height that is X, Y, and Z. And you start seeing things that can help you learn a bit more about your own personal self. And then family linkages and relations. And, I've had some interesting things happen to friends that didn't know they had cousins living in the same city as them. Or some people have found out that they have relatives that have the exact same name as them, and they've been living their whole life not knowing that there are two of them, if you will. I've also had friends find out that their fathers aren't their fathers, and their mothers aren't their mothers, and some really interesting things along those regards. And so what I will say is, if you start going into the resources and tools that have been developed in the modern day to find out about your cultural heritage, you may find out certain things that would be of absolute surprise, and things that for a very long time people had no way of discovering. And I don't think that anyone's doing anything different, really. I think that people have always made choices and have made decisions based off of the moment or whatever it might be. But I think for a long time, people have gotten away with a lot more. And now that we're in this age of transparency, you may find out that there are things that have happened to you in your life or things that have happened in someone else's life that have made you that you would have never known about. So with that said, go into it with an open mind and know that who you are is exactly who you're supposed to be, and you are beautiful, and you are capable, and you are wonderful. And all the best to you in your discovery of heritage. Now, moving into consideration number 2, there are always groups of people that are associated by culture getting together and having conversation. Now, if you're from a smaller town or you're in a remote location, that may now mean that you need to tap into that online. But for many people who are living in small, medium, or large cities, there are typically cultural groups that are actively getting together in physical form. And what are some of the things that you might learn if you think about joining groups like this? And I can speak about this firsthand because I was raised going to a German American club, and I can strongly associate a lot of the things that I identify with my German culture from the experiences that I had at the German club. Now, I only wish that I was a part of all of the different associations that are a part of my cultural heritage, but having the German part of me come to life through these experiences is something that I would not change for the world. So a couple things that you might learn. Number 1, fashion trends. What are people from your culture wearing? Why are they wearing them? Is it really hot where you come from? Is it really cold where you come from? Are they making the fabrics out of a particular dye that comes from a special tree that is only found in the regions that you come from? You never really know. And then beyond that, this could be, tattoos. It could be, coming of age markings that you're, getting on your body. It could be piercings. But understanding the story behind these things, what kind of makeup do people wear in your culture? What kind of hairstyles are they wearing in your culture, and why? And when you start thinking about those things and discovering those things, you might find out that you're like totally into it. Or you might totally rebel against it. But, oftentimes I find that when you put yourself into an environment that has rooted reasoning behind it, it usually is something that you're gravitated towards. Now, that has a lot to do with my food preferences. Now, when you go into groups that share your cultural background and you start digging into recipes, or you start digging into like marketplaces that have off-the-shelf components, like for example, I'll speak to my German heritage, but there are German bäckereis that have imported the flour from Germany so that it's made, it's grown, it's manufactured in Germany, and they will put that flour into the bread that they're making here in America, so that when you purchase the bread, it is more authentic to what it is that you're getting from the homeland. And, and pickles and sauerkraut and like all of these things that are, and it's the way that they make sausages, the flavorings and the spices that go into things. All of those things are very tied into cultural root. And so the food preferences that you learn about when you join some of these groups, and you get out there and you jump into your culture is really amazing. And then beyond that, just the basic traditions, Kinderkarneval, the celebrations. What kind of sports are people into? What kind of religion is being practiced? And again, I'm going to bring it up. And why? Is it because of, Magellan showing up in the... And why? Is it because of Magellan showing up in the Philippines? Is it because of, a god coming down and having some kind of amazing moment in your hometown? Is it the way that you tell stories and the way that you pass things down? And so with that said, thinking about those things and reaching out to some of those clubs that are existing right around you or right online will give you the opportunity to tie into more of that cultural heritage. And then consideration number 3, and this is something that, again, I was so fortunate because I lost my grandpa last year, and my grandpa and my grandmother met when he was serving in the U.S. Army. He's from Puerto Rico, and he met my grandmother in her hometown in Germany while he was stationed there. And when I was 30 years old, and I grew up speaking German, but I had never been to Germany. And I was 30 or 31, and my sister was living in Berlin at the time, and my mom and my grandparents decided to go to Germany. And they invited us to join. And my grandma, unfortunately, fell and hurt herself, which we had a lot of fun with her in her wheelchair. And there were some pranks that we pulled there. And it was really hysterical to see her getting loaded on and off of the trains on a forklift. It was really hysterical. In her, she looked fabulous in her frock, and it was winter time. She had her coat on, she looked fabulous. And then boop, 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 she'd get lifted up by the forklift. And we get put onto the train. Anyway, good memories. But walking through the streets of where my grandmother was a little girl, going into the train station where my grandma met my grandpa, understanding seeing the house that my mom grew up in, all of that, understanding the folklore, understanding the air quality and these things called salinas, and this whole system of neighborly environment, and who makes the hats and who fixes the boots and who is in control of the gate that goes up and down to let the boats through. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And if I could make a recommendation to anybody out there, it would be to make a journey back to your homeland, and to be escorted with someone who can show you a little bit about that. Even if you go by yourself, totally great. I'm not going to say that you should not, but number one, I would say family trips. If you can hear your story from the source, you are going to be able to understand more about the choices that led to you becoming you and being made, than you ever would being able to go on your own. If you can't do that, going on group or individual trips is also super great. You can see the environment, you can explore the tradition. But if I can make a suggestion, it would be, if you have the opportunity to host or be hosted, getting to see the environment through the lens of a local and to give your perspective to somebody else would be an awesome way to go. So you can also find exchange programs online where people from your hometown or where you're from might be looking for a trip to wherever it is that you are. And you can say, hey, you want to come stay with me for a month? It'll be you free room and board. I have 3 weeks or 3 weekends to take you around, but I'm going to come out and stay with you for a month, and you can exchange those pieces and you can save a lot of money. and you can see things from a local perspective. And my mom actually does this with a group from Brazil, and she does an incredible job. But their passion and value is connected through medicine. And so medical students from Brazil will come up. My mom will host all of those medical students at different homes throughout the Southern California area. And then my mom will take medical students down to Brazil, and some of them are Brazilian and have Brazilian heritage. And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is just incredible. And you get to save a lot of money, but then again, you get to see things through the lens of the local. So that is going to be it for me. I'm going to wrap up the conversation of culture there. I obviously am passionate about it. And I want to leave you with that final question, right? How do you want to be a part of your community? Do you want to contribute? Do you want to be involved? And do you want to leave your environment better than you found it? Do you want to know about where you come from and speak eloquently about your heritage? Or do you want to let it pass you by and save it for a different day? The choice is yours. I certainly hope that you choose to get involved. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you do want to follow me, you can find me at Zelladu_ on Instagram. You can also go to zelladu.com. You'll find this PDF and this conversation there. You'll also obviously find me on YouTube. And you should check out my podcast, The Question of You. It is really, really fun, and it's short and it's sweet. And then if you enjoy the song that you're hearing, this is an original by my sister and I. It's called Escalator, It's Now or Never. I'm on vocals and my sister did the music. Feel free to download it on Bandcamp or not. I look very much forward, I don't even know how to say that. I look forward to May and talking about education. This is another component of life that I think is so interesting to talk about. Please leave your comments in the thread. And thank you so much for allowing me to improve on my own conversation and my own pieces and to express myself. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'll see you again in May.
It's now or never.